It's funny you should say that because usually we're across an ocean or in an entirely different room.
That's true. That's true. But it feels further away because we're across the room from each other instead of you being in my computer in my face.
That's true. Yeah.
That's funny. Hi, I'm Patricia. Welcome to the 60th episode of A Breath of Song. I'm so glad you chose to do this today, which is extra special because Lea Morris is joining us for a songwriter conversation, and we're actually in the same room. Hi, Lea, welcome.
Thanks so much, Patricia. I appreciate you having me.
So, to quote Lea, may I ever use my hands for lifting up, may I ever use my voice for speaking truth. We're here to uncover wellness, lifted up, truth-speaking, one song at a time. Your voice is exactly what's needed for this. We're coming to you from the Upper Valley Music Center on the unceded lands of the Abenaki in what is now called Lebanon, New Hampshire. And Lea, tell us how you got here today.
Oh, I'll give you the short version.
Okay.
The short version was rental car from Milford, New Hampshire. The longer version involves planes and...
So where did those planes start?
In Germany. I'm living about an hour from Hanover, Germany now. And then I was in Portland for the General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalists, and then have flown east again, and we'll be doing a number of sharing performances.
And you look so remarkably sane and calm.
Well, I will accept that and say this is towards the beginning of my journeys. Who knows how I'll look at the end, but I'm having a great time. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, good. So all of our voices will turn up as they are today, and no matter what, we can feel the connection to our breath and vibration in our body. Let's find how good it can feel to sing. Last week I shared Lea's song, Keep Your Heart Wide Open. Today Lea will be teaching us a song of hers called Just As You Are. We'll learn it slowly so it can settle inside you and you can begin to trust it as a resource, let it move you into a state of flow. Then we get to enjoy a conversation with Lea, and we'll close out with the song again at the end. The beautiful thing about podcasts is you can always rewind. So let's start with a good yawn stretch. Maybe roll your shoulders a bit or move into your back, whatever feels good in your body. Oh, and let your voice start making noise. Just letting it come through on the breath. And as your breath comes in, notice how it can widen your rib cage. And as it goes out, let it release something. And as it comes in, let it push down into your belly. And as it goes out, let it take something with it. One more, breathing into your back, widening either side of your spine, and releasing. Yeah, and try scrunching up your face, making a little mask, tight mask, and let me hear some sounds. Yeah, and open up wide. And let's do some sighs going up. And back down again, and another one. And if you have those kinds of magic lips that you can flubber or a tongue that you can flutter, go ahead. Yeah, Lea, I'll turn it over to you to share the song.
Wonderful. Just as you are without changing a thing, just as you are, I accept you. I see you, I hear you, I welcome you in, just as you are, just as you are, just as you are without changing a thing, just as you are, I accept you. I see you, I hear you, I welcome you in, just as you are, just as you are.
You want to teach it to us just a bit at a time, or just let us sing it with you?
Sure, why don't we sing it a couple of more times?
Yeah.
Just as you are without changing a thing, just as you are, I accept you. I see you, I hear you, I welcome you in, just as you are, just as you are, just as you are without changing a thing, just as you are, I accept you. I see you, I hear you, I welcome you in, just as you are, just as you are. I'll sing it one more time.
Yeah.
Just as you are without changing a thing, just as you are, I accept you. I see you, I hear you, I welcome you in, just as you are, just as you are.
I'm going to be really picky for my need. So those notes, I see you, I
Hear you, I.
So it's that I is the same time each time.
Yeah.
See you, I hear you, I
Welcome you in.
in. That's sweet.
Thank you.
That is sweet. Do you have harmonies for it?
I have a little echo thing that happens, and I had the wonderful joy of singing the song with Emma's Revolution
Oh, wow.
on Sunday, and they, brought harmonies in and did other things that I hadn't heard, and was just like, oh.
Oh, yay. Well,
Sweet.
I'd be willing to give a shot at holding it if you wanted to harmonize it, or if you wanted me to play with harmonies.
Sure.
We could do it, and you who are listening can do what feels right for you in your voice.
Sure.
Which way do you want to go?
Why don't we do both?
Okay.
It's a brief little
Yeah,
nugget.
it's a
So
little nugget.
I can sing the melody twice, and you do what you hear.
Okay.
And then we'll
Then
switch.
I'll switch.
Yeah,
Okay.
sounds
we'll
good.
see what happens.
Yeah,
This
let's
could be
just play.
exciting.
Here we go. 3, 4. Just as you are without changing a thing, just as you are, I accept you. I see you, I hear you, I welcome you in, just as you are, just as you are, just as you are without changing a thing, just as you are, I accept you. I see you, I hear you, I welcome you in, just as you are, just as you are, just as you are, without changing a thing, just as you are, without changing. Here we go. Just as you are, I accept. Just as you are, see you, I hear you, I welcome you in, just as you are, just as you are.
So we better do it together.
Let's
one
do
more
it.
time.
Yeah. Just as you are without changing a thing. Just as you are. Just as you are, I accept. Just as you are. See you, I feel you, I welcome you in. Just as you are. Just as you are. And then I'll just do a regular harmony. Just as you are without changing a thing. just as you are. Sweet. Just as we be.
So tell me about that song. Tell me how it came to be.
Well, early on in 2020, I'll say midsummer, sort of May, June. It was maybe 3 or 4 months into really hunkering down with my family, who consisted of my partner and my 3 children, who are 6, 12, and at the time, my eldest was 19 or so. And she and I, there was friction, you know, 2 adults. We were 2 adults living in a household that I thought of as my household, and she thought of, you know, just that whole dynamic, magnified by the fact that we really didn't have anywhere to go to get away from each other, right? She didn't have school, I didn't have work things. It was just our energy.
Right.
And I was taking a daily walk, preserving my sanity, making sure I was at, you know, the best I could be each day. So I'd wake up before everybody else and take a walk. And on that day, for whatever reason, I was upset. Honestly, I think it was like dishes. That was a common theme. It's like, you haven't washed your dishes. Let's argue all day about it. So I was just taking this walk, and I thought, how can there be more peace between me and my daughter? And this song came as a gift, and I started thinking this song towards her, you know, just holding her in my mind and thinking this song towards her. And since that day, literally, our relationship has completely flipped. She's one of my best friends. She's one of the wisest people I know. I don't fuss at her about dishes. We don't live together anymore either, which might have
makes it easier,
right. It
but
might
still.
But it really has made a huge difference in my relationship with her. And something that the song has also gifted me is a recognition that what I really benefited from the most was taking those lyrics and turning them on to myself. Because what I recognize is that I was coming towards her with a lot of judgment and expectations and things I wanted her to do better than I had done them.
Yes.
And so it was really a lot about self-forgiveness and self-acceptance.
Yes.
And once, you know, I had that in place in my relationship towards her, then it wasn't so much of this, you've got to do better than I did, you know, you just be yourself. I was really able to say, okay, I'm going to be myself at my best, which is not always perfect. And you're going to be yourself at your best, which is not always what I want it to be. But here we are, and I love you. And you don't have to change anything for that to be the fact.
Isn't that one of the most beautiful things that parenting gifts us with, is those chances to... I had a tough time with my daughter when, I think she'd be okay with me sharing this because it was now several years ago, but when her baby was young, you know, and I was helping out during the beginning of the pandemic. And so what happened was she felt like I was coming in with a lot of judgment, which I may have been. I was coming in with a lot of, I want to fix this. I want to fix it, you know. I don't want you to have the same, I hate seeing you tired, you know, and I want to fix it so that you're not tired anymore. And that whole energy of trying to fix things is different than the energy of accepting first.
Definitely.
And for me, making that shift of realizing, oh, fixing is not actually that helpful. Even though that's kind of what I was trying to do to myself. I mean, you know, queen of self-help books. Here. You know, it's like, fix it, fix it, fix it. And finally realizing, oh, wait, actually, that's not what makes things, I don't even want to use the word better. That's not what shifts things. Fixing. The fixing energy is not what works.
Yeah, I think there's a time and place for everything. And certainly in relationships, in, you know, human relationships, when we can come in with, if our first intention is acceptance and non-judgment, and I've encountered a lot of parents, and for myself, it hasn't really been a challenge in our household as my kids are discovering identity and I'm discovering identity, and we're learning and becoming more of who we are. But I know that's been a huge piece for a lot of folks is who I've gotten a chance to share this song with, recognizing my child is perhaps, or anyone, my partner or my sibling or my parent is, or my neighbor is other than I would want them to be, rather than trying to fix or change, just saying, you know what, my first step here is to accept you, to honor you, to see your humanity, and let that be really all that matters. Let that be
Right,
connecting
which doesn't
piece.
mean that you can't then have the conversation about doing the dishes. It doesn't mean that abusive behavior becomes okay, or
Right.
that doesn't mean that we don't get to have our boundaries and we don't get to say what's okay.
Exactly.
But it does mean that we start by that. And it's so beautiful to me that you realize that acceptance of yourself, that being, I sing so many of these songs that come on this podcast to myself. They sound like songs that I might be singing to give to somebody else, but no, I'm really giving them to myself.
Yeah.
Because when I'm healed, or when I'm working from that place, it makes life easier.
Yeah.
Makes life more fun.
Yeah, and it's like you said, with recognizing that there's nothing outside of me that needs to be fixed, and really there's not anything inside of me that needs to be
No.
fixed either, just perspectives and choices. And when I am proactive, when I'm intentional about what choices I'm making and what perspectives I'm choosing, then I have a very different experience.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I have some
That part
control.
of getting to choose some of your own
Yeah.
experience. So speaking of choosing your experience, I describe A Breath of Song as being a podcast about sharing songs that help us uncover the wellness that's already there inside ourselves, singing to help us heal and adapt and grow. Can you tell us about another time when you felt like singing or a particular song was strongly connected to your wellness?
Well, I grew up in the church. I grew up in the Baptist church, which is, I could tell stories that would feel good and stories that would not feel good. But I can tell you that overall, my experience of growing up in that faith tradition has been one of recognizing that song and music and voices raised together, a cappella harmonies, that is, I won't even say a preview of heaven, that's what it is.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
an opportunity for us to experience a closeness, a connection, a unity that is maybe rare in communities. It just, this isn't necessarily my biological family. I grew up singing with my biological family, but when you're in a community of singers, you recognize that joining of voices is something that reminds us how closely we can be connected without even touching. So recently I've had the opportunity again, after years of not singing with folks, as we all have had, depending on
Right.
when you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
It had been a couple of years since the last time I was able to just sing harmonies with people. And I joined up with a group of masked singers near my now hometown in Germany, and we're singing gospel songs with Germans, and they're singing in English, but they're singing songs that I grew up with, that, like, for them it's this kind of unique, exotic cultural experience. For me, it's going home. So I'm sitting with these folks singing, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is... It just felt really welcoming, and I don't know, it just brought me back to something really foundational to who I am as a musician, as a person, as a believer's maybe a strong word, but as a spiritual entity, just like back to my core. So
That's beautiful. I was going to ask how you have this wonderful, flexible, skillful voice, and you could sing anything, right? You could be doing any kind of music you wanted to be doing. And I wondered what's drawing you into community singing.
yeah, it's a return home without
Yeah.
question. That's the first kind of music I sang was in church, a cappella harmonies, songs of spirits, songs of faith, but songs that were really about connecting us with that higher power, that sense of something beyond ourselves. And in any community, that's exactly what it is.
Do you remember one of your favorites?
Oh, so many. Right now, for some reason, in that great getting up morning, fairly well, keeps coming into my mind. So,
So I have to say, you use that song. You sing that in the start of your CD, your album release of
Yeah.
Good Morning Songs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's on
yeah.
your website. It is the coolest rendition. I love it. I love what you started with there. And
Thank
so
you.
I will put the link to that in the show notes. And anybody who has an ear for music, please, please, please go find thisislea.com. It's just such a great rendition.
Fun, thank you.
What is the earliest, if you can pick back, what's the earliest song memory you have?
So it's hard to tell whether this is a memory or something someone told me. I have a visual of it. I remember the dark wood on the sanctuary and looking out. I can totally see First Baptist Church of Baltimore, Liberty Road, like I'm there. And I believe I remember and wasn't told, being 3 or 4 and singing, "There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place." And I remember that my hair was in a couple of puffballs up on the side. And I remember that folks were laughing, like there was just sort of mirth and levity. And I'm like, why are they laughing at me?
Right, they were probably so joyful to hear you singing.
Having heard young voices as an adult, I understand it now. But, it's just,
At the time. So tell me a little bit about your evolution into becoming a singer and your relationship with your voice and how has that changed?
Well, I was, again, I'm told, and this one I know I don't remember, but I was told that I was crying in the birth canal. That, that I came out squealing.
So your relationship with your voice was there and solid
At the
from
start,
the
as soon as there was air, it was
okay.
I have things to sing. So, and I grew up, singing with my mom's family. They were the Jones family gospel singers, so there was always singing and music in my childhood. It was never like, and now I will sing. It wasn't optional. It was like walking, breathing, eating. It was just one of the things that you do.
As you got older, as you came out of being a child and you started coming into the music world, and your father was also a musician,
Yes.
and so your parents were both in the music world. Did you ever want to leave it and not do music because of that? Or?
Oh, interesting question. Because of that kind of puts a different spin on the question. When I was little, I remember wanting to be a veterinarian. I always loved animals. And I remember wanting to be a minister, a preacher. And I grew up in the Southern Baptist tradition at the time. There were only male leaders in the church. And
What they missed.
and I think they're growing.
has
Like many
changed.
faiths are expanding. But my dad was not classically trained, but he went to school for music, has perfect pitch, and is a very intense person in a lot of ways. And so his attitude toward music wasn't always fun and easy, and there was a lot of correction, pitch correction, and like heavy-handed perfectionism. And from the time I was about 7 till the time I was 14, I just didn't want anything to do with music other than with my mom and her family. I went on singing with them. But if it was sheet music, piano lessons, flute, all those things that I might have continued to do, I just didn't want my dad leaning over my shoulder going, wrong, do it again, wrong, do it again. So, and I have at times thought that I might have missed out on that time. It's really a formative time, and you're learning and practice and all those things. But I picked up the guitar when I was 13, just kind of peers were playing, and I thought, this is interesting. And I had my uncle taught me to play a G major chord, gave me a thumb pick, and that set me on my way. And interestingly, I was drawn to a style of music that my dad really, it was outside his wheelhouse. So like, this is my G major chord, this kind of thing. Like I was really into a style of music that my dad was like, what is that? does
Like
not compute.
Tracy Chapman.
Yeah,
and
yeah, just
sing-
like hill
yeah.
music. He calls it, the picking and grinning, that whole
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
And he was more of a soul funk
Okay,
style, and it
yeah.
could well be that I gravitated towards a style of music that he really didn't have any interest in, because he then
Yeah,
would leave me alone.
because to keep him out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but I couldn't escape that those are part of my roots. The
Right.
soul and the
Right.
funk and the gospel. They're still like in my toes. They're still at the root of what I'm doing. So yeah.
So many people who listen to my podcast, I know because they've written to me, and they feel separated from their voice. They feel like they're not allowed to sing, that they're not good enough, that they're not supposed to sing because they don't sound like a recording when they sing. What would you say to them?
First of all, I think in this building where we are right now, there's a Music Together class taking place, and they really articulate that well, that everybody's born musical. Everybody's born with a gift, an interest, a passion even for music, right? We want to communicate that way, and we want to express that way. And along the way, it does often happen. First of all, not everybody's exposed to music early. So it's kind of like if you had a child and you set them in a chair and you never spoke to them, they would not learn to speak.
Right.
And likewise, many kids don't have the opportunity to learn and engage deeply with music like you. I don't know what your story is, but I certainly had that opportunity very early. And if someone speaks to that child that's in the corner but says, don't speak, or don't speak these words, or those are the wrong words, and discourages exploration and expression, then that kid will think, I'm not supposed to speak. And I think that happens to a lot of people who feel not musical or not musical enough, is that one person, one music teacher, or one, choral director says, that's not the right note, or you're missing the pitch, or whatever it is, early enough that they believe that, and they take that on into their identity. And I've known plenty of people who don't match pitches and sing with nothing but joy. And at the end of the day, if you never learn to match pitch, still follow your joy. That's what I would say. Follow your joy, sing because it feels good. You don't have to be on a recording. If you need to be in the shower, if you need the privacy of the shower to really find your joy, to do that, the privacy of your car to find your joy in singing, do that. But let yourself have that part of your expression. It's so intrinsic to our being, or drumming or dancing or whatever lets you feel that musical part of yourself. Yeah.
It's interesting. I've worked with hundreds of people, adults who believed they couldn't sing and couldn't match pitch. And when they started singing with me, we're not matching pitches or anything. And I've always found that it's a body connection, that if we can find a relaxation, and if we can not match pitch for a while, but just practice the muscle movement of going, sliding, just getting that slide, so that then your body remembers, I can talk up here, and I can talk down here, and I don't always have to talk at exactly the same pitch, and I don't even ever do that really in real life.
Right.
Most people's pitches change constantly, right? And then beginning to start to feel what it's like to sing the same pitch as somebody. But I was completely surprised by that, having grown up in a classical tradition and accompanied vocalist. I thought that either you could sing on pitch or you couldn't. And I was one of the people who couldn't reliably sing on pitch, and other people could. It was an either or situation. And it wasn't until I started learning it that I started realizing, this is actually a facility like walking or like biking, and there's a very, very small percentage, I think it's 0.03% of the population, that can't hear pitch differences. But I haven't met anybody yet.
Yeah, another thing that I was thinking about while you were saying that, and it surprises me, it's really fascinating that you went from believing you were unable to consistently match pitch to guiding other people to their voices. I think that's a really sweet liberation story.
I think it's partly because it made it easier for me to teach because I'd actually had the experience of learning it.
Right.
So I really believed it was possible to learn. And I think sometimes for teachers who have matched pitch easily all their lives, they're not sure that it's possible to learn.
Yep.
Right?
That makes sense.
You know?
Totally makes sense.
Because they haven't gone through that journey themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have my awkward question for you. Are you ready for
Ooh, well, we'll see.
So you have a lot more melanin in your skin than
It
I
is
do.
so. It is so.
And you're part of the global majority, right? And there's this conversation now in community song leading where it tends to be a predominantly white space.
Sure.
For inexplicable reasons to me.
I think,
Yeah. Go ahead.
and this is all entirely based on observation, not any research. So, I could
Yeah.
could be wrong.
Oh, do
but
it.
I would say that, those who are not necessarily singing in organized community sing groups are singing in other spaces. They're singing in church, they're
Maybe
singing
don't
at
have the
home.
same need.
Well, it's an entirely different cultural connection to the singing. And I feel like with a lot of my friends who are of European descent, it feels like a returning in a sense, right? And, I can say the same for myself to some extent because I spent my high school years really focusing on the singer-songwriter thing, guitar, organized pop songs, that sort of thing, rather than simple, accessible songs that were sung in community. That said, as a larger community, I would say that very many Black people are certainly still singing together in church,
Right.
And not everybody. Certainly, I don't know what's happening with the younger generation. My daughter may not have a group that she goes to sing together. They might be celebrating in different ways. And I couldn't really speak to Asian or Latinx communities, what their experience of communal music is. But I feel like what's happening with a lot of European people is this resurgence, this desire to connect. Again, this feeling of disconnection from perhaps one another, from cultural roots, which is really hilarious because we live in this colonized reality. And yet, I think the roots that maybe are feeling that folks might be feeling disconnected from are the almost prehistoric roots, those pagan ancestors. We want to go pre-Greece. We want to go pre-Christianity. We want to feel our feet in the ground. We want to feel our that groundedness that has kind of been missing in this highly cerebral community, this culture that's emerged in the last 2,000 years. People are trying to get home.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think also moving away from a patriarchal version of the culture to where the roots are coming from a different place. And the strength and the power is coming sort of up from the groundedness.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think the process of being colonizers is wounding in itself. It has created its own trauma history and its own healing that needs to happen. And I think that kind of grounding, that access to earth energy is critical for that to happen. That's interesting, yeah. So my question, where I was going when I first started that, where I was going was to ask you if there was a story that you wanted to share as somebody who is Black and who spends time in predominantly white spaces. If there's a story that you want to share that you want people to hear, and there may or may not be, there doesn't have to be, but I was just...
Sure. Well, rather than a story, a question that I often have heard is I feel there's a great sensitivity and a desire to be respectful. So there's a lot of questions. Well, isn't this appropriation? That's like, oh, are we allowed to sing this? And are we allowed to engage with this music? And I think you and I briefly maybe touched on some of this during a previous conversation. My tendency, and I don't speak for everyone, let it be clear, I speak only for me, Lea.
Right.
But my tendency is to believe that music is a connector, and it's rare in the sense that when you engage in a song that comes from another tradition, you get a little taste of what it is to experience, to be part of that tradition. So if I sing, a perfect example, I was telling someone that I often have sung Molly Malone to my children as they're going to sleep. Is that appropriation? You know, I have friends of Irish descent, and they haven't discouraged me from singing it. I could ask them directly. But I would say, you know, there's an exception. One exception would be if this is sacred music and people have no concept of the connotations and what it means. It is certainly wise to inform oneself, to seek out opportunities to ask, what does this mean? What do these words mean? What is the history? All those things, to engage as closely with the music as possible. But as to the question of appropriation, my opinion is take this music in, take these people, these lives in as part of yourself, and let that be part of your enrichment. Less fear, more welcoming. You know?
and gathering.
That's-
Yeah. I would point out that you did know that Molly Malone was Irish. And I think some of the hesitation comes from how many people have sung Tula Clezio, you know, and not known that it was South African. Or some of those pieces, especially from South Africa, are composed pieces. They were written by somebody, you know, and that one is Joseph Shabalala, right? And so they're actually composed pieces, and that gets, oh, well, it's just...
Yeah.
You know, and the syllables are nonsense syllables. Well, no, they're not nonsense syllables. They actually have meaning.
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's some, as you said, knowing about the song, and then you get to engage in it in a different way,
Definitely.
right?
Some appropriateness.
Yes.
Rather than appropriation.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. What about, so another question that I hear people saying often is, how do I make my space welcome? How do I make it so that you, Lea, would feel comfortable coming in? Is there anything that I can do that would make you feel particularly welcome coming into my space, which is 98%, you know, white people?
Yeah. Well, you know, again, can't speak for everyone else.
Of course not.
I can say that the choir, that group of Germans that I mentioned to you, they were probably 98% 65 years and older. And so they were asking themselves the questions, how can we become more welcoming to younger singers? It's really however you're trying to expand your reach.
Yeah.
Because you're not necessarily part of that group you're trying to reach out to, it can be really hard to know what would draw them in. How can we... I would say that sometimes, to some extent, you might have to let go of that a little bit, because 20-somethings may not want to sing with 60-somethings. And, you know, Black people who are being fed their musical experience in church may not feel the need to come into this predominantly white circle and sing. Alternatively, there may be opportunities to say, would you, with your group, like to merge with us in our group just for a time? Let's make this a night. Let's make this an occasion, and see if, rather than, you know, trying to swallow up the whole world all at once, see if there are opportunities to make little sparks of larger community, of drawing the circle wider. That's just a thought. You know, then there are logistical things like, where and how are you marketing? How are you letting folks know about your singing? Well, if you're doing that in predominantly white spaces, guess what's going to happen?
Right.
You know?
Right. Those are the people who are going to hear about it.
Yeah, and who are your friends?
Yeah.
Who do you actually engage with on a regular basis? And I've heard people say that, you know, they'd like to draw their personal circle wider and get to know more people who appear different. Yeah, it's a lifelong journey, fun task to do so.
Yeah, to break down, to break through barriers. Or, and to do that, I think sometimes you have to start by acknowledging them. You have to start by saying, oh, this actually exists.
Yeah.
You know, where yeah. All right, I'm going to shut up.
No, it's super interesting question.
I have a question for you. I know that you've been commissioned by the Natural Voices Network to write a piece for their Black Lives Matter commissioning project. So what I'm curious about is you've been asked to compose a piece. Where do you start?
Listening. That's and actually, it's funny you should ask because I started to get some inspiration for that just last night. Listening to what wants to be sung through me at any time. Same as with any piece, just really paying attention and then taking the time to be still and engage with that. Yeah, and it sounds all very esoteric because that's how it starts.
Do you, when you say listening, at what point does it become vocal? Or at what point do you pick up the guitar and start noodling?
When I take the time, when I'm saying this is the time, then immediately, right? That's part of the listening. It's like, oh, it's coming.
It's coming. Go sit down.
Right.
Go sit down, let it come through.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you refine a piece? So suppose you've noodled, something has come through, you've got the core of something, and you
Right.
know, okay, this I've got something.
Yeah.
What is your process? And it may be different every time, I don't know, but what do you do from there?
Well, there was a time when I would say the way I write is that I pick up my guitar and find something that I haven't played before. And then listen for what the melody can be there. And once the melody's settled in, listen for what words might hold that melody together. That is a common way that I've approached composition. In the last couple of years, so much of my composing has been a cappella, has been while I'm walking, has been kind of in motion, has been almost meditative or reflective. There's a specific word I'm looking for. It's really been devotional. And that I wouldn't even dare to try to explain how that I don't know. I have no idea. It's like that's just I'm grateful. I receive and I am grateful. In the case of an intentional composition like this, I try to combine the two, right? So a little bit of order and science and a good deal of what wants to be sung here so that, I'm allowing as much as tweaking it almost at the same time, and so I have this chorus. I'm not going to sneak peek it now because I think this is going to be the piece, but this is born yesterday.
Yeah.
And singing it over and over and over again until I'm sure I'm hearing it right.
So you could sing a smidgen of it, and then people would hear what it became at the other. It's not held, right? This is not held.
Right.
It would give people a window into then they could go listen for it in the fall.
Sure, and see whether or not that even winds up.
See whether it ends up being
and
the same piece, because it might be something
exactly
totally different.
Very true. So what I was hearing was I woke up in my dream right before I woke up. I was dreaming that I was recording this melody, and I dreamt that like 2 or 3 times in a row that I was recording this melody, and then I realized I'm asleep. I'm not recording this. I gotta wake up and record this. And so I'm like, shake myself out of sleep, find my phone, and then I start recording it. And now it sounds like, it sounds like this half awake person trying to sing a melody. So what I was able to decipher out of that was la 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 la. Da 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 dum da 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 ba da ba da, and that's
Yay!
Well,
I hear it coming.
yeah.
Beautiful, nice. Nice. I love that. Thank you for being willing to share that, because I know composing can be kind of a private thing, and you don't know where it's going to go,
Sure,
and
sure.
it's not finished, and it's like showing somebody, something that's, I mean, it is showing somebody that's not something that's
Unfinished, yeah.
unfinished.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for being willing to do that.
Well, thank you for asking.
I am curious about what led you to Germany.
Now that's a long old story. The shortish version is that my partner is German. I was an exchange student in Germany my senior year of high school, so I'm kind of going backwards. We'd been talking for years about going back, and then 2020 was just the year that kept giving. And what it was giving was not anything that, let's say, it gave us all the reason to relocate. And that's what we did for the well-being of our family.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you and your partner been raising your children speaking German as bilingually?
Yes,
Alone?
yes.
So
Because I am the entity who was most at home, I, was responsible for their German up to that point, which means imperfect, broken, accented German, but foundationally enough that when we made the move, it wasn't starting from scratch.
yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I was an exchange student in Denmark for a year.
Hey,
So
neat.
I
There you
have
go.
my broken
Right.
Danish.
Yeah.
Yeah, so is there anything else that you are excited about right now that you'd like to share?
Well, I'm excited right now. In this particular moment, we talked, I think, before we started pushing the red button, on a tour of part of the East Coast, sharing these songs that I have been singing with my looper, kind of not alone, because we've had the opportunity to share them virtually, but this will be the first time getting to share them with other living people in the same space. I'm really excited about that.
I've never done that before. I don't know what that's like, to go from place to place and meet different people almost every day.
Yeah, yeah.
And be surrounded by new people and hear new voices. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Lightning round. We're getting close to the end of my set of questions.
Okay.
My official set of
So
questions.
lightning round means quick answers.
Well, that's what I say every time. Yeah. We'll see what happens. What's an album that was really important to you?
Oh, where to start? Songs in the Key of Life pops into my head, but there's so many.
That's okay. You can start with that one. What is your favorite soup?
Soup. Yummy soup. I like a cream of, you know what's really good? My mother-in-law's pumpkin soup. Yum.
Ooh.
Yum.
Ooh, nice. Nice. All right, good. What is your favorite replacement curse word?
Well, dag nabbit just came up.
Dag
So
nabbit.
for right now, we'll dag nabbit.
Wow. I have not heard that one.
No?
I've read it, but I don't think I've ever heard anybody say it.
Well, let's keep hanging out. No.
All right, we'll keep hanging out. I dropped something on your toes or
Right,
something.
right.
What is a sound that you feel strongly about? This doesn't have to be a beautiful sound. It's just a sound that you really react to. It could be beautiful, but
Well, my youngest is 6 and still makes some pretty serious, screeches and mom. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Who is an artist that you wish more people listened to?
I'm a big Richard Julian fan. I don't know how many people know his writing. It's really clever songwriting. And I was listening to some of his New Orleans Fleur de Lis album coming in.
Okay, so I might have to track you down for a link for that.
Yeah,
we'll,
certainly
we'll
will.
put links in the show notes
Yeah.
for the Stevie Wonder and for
Sure,
the,
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Before we close, where can we find you and follow your projects?
Well, the most obvious is my website. This is Lea.com. Lea spelled Lea. So this is Lea.com. YouTube, same story. / This is Lea. And those are probably the best spots. And if you come to my website, then definitely drop me a line, send an email, say hi.
Great. And if you're a song leader, there are actually many song leaders who listen to this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a song leader, could you tell song leaders what your process is if they want to share your songs with their groups?
Right. Up to this point, what I've been doing is accepting donations. So people have gotten in touch and said, I'd like to share this song. And when I have notation, which I don't for everything, but I do for some things, I have a book actually of songs that were written rather early, those devotional pieces that came on walks. And so that's an easy way to grab hold of the notation if folks are interested in that. And then I just see different choirs, different people have different needs and abilities. So I ask folks to contribute what they're able to.
Wonderful. So a huge thank you
Thank
to you,
you.
Leah, for that generosity and for coming and talking with me today, for doing an in-person, helping me kind of break through the first in-person interview. I believe, I haven't listened to it yet, but I believe it worked.
Yeah, here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
We did it. And a huge thank you to you, our listeners. I'm so glad you're singing with us. Let me remind you that sharing this podcast with your friends really makes a difference. Your donations make a difference to help cover the costs of production. There's a tip jar. Visit abreathofsong.com to see the show notes with links and lyrics and Patty Piotrowski's glorious artwork. Sign up to get artwork and music in your mailbox. How beautiful is that? Leave something in the tip jar to help cover costs. I said that already. Before Patty or I is paid, 25% is donated to the Jazz Foundation of America, which directly supports jazz, blues, and roots musicians in need. The skill and artistry of these musicians has directly shaped most of the music I share on this podcast in one way or another, yet historically they have been inadequately recognized and unfairly recompensed for their work. So let's sing Just As You Are again. Leah was just about to get a drink of tea, but let's sing it again to help it sink in more deeply.
Just as you are without changing a thing. Just as you are, I accept you. I see you, I hear you, I welcome you in. Just as you are. Just as you are. Just as you are without changing a thing. Just as you are, I accept you. I see you, I hear you, I welcome you in. Just as you are. Just as you are.
Thank you for joining Leah and me today for A Breath of Song. I'm grateful that you're taking care of yourself and listening to your voice. I believe making a better world starts with listening to ourselves and each other, which is what we just did. So yay us. If you're liking this podcast, please share with a friend, and next time we'll plant another song. Be well. Yay! Thumbs up!
Awesome.
Awesome.